Are the Vancouver Canucks about to make a massive splash in the trade market? With Mason McTavish and Pavel Zacha emerging as prime center targets, we're looking at potential deals that could completely reshape this team's offensive core. But here's the million-dollar question. What would it actually take to pry these talented centers away from their current teams? And more importantly, should the Canucks even pull the trigger on these blockbuster moves? We're going to dive right into that right after the intro. What's up, guys? Welcome to the line change. And as you guys can see, I'm rocking my Abbotsford Canucks hat that I picked up the other day. Trust me, next thing I get that's Abbotsford related will be a jersey. It'll obviously be plain, but I'm hoping I'll be able to put a name and number on the back. Let me know in the comment section down below which name and number should I put on the jersey. But moving on to our topic, we're going to be looking at not one, but two off-season center trade targets. And we're going to be using an article. Excuse me. Ooh, excuse me. Yeah, we're going to be looking at two articles for each person. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. We're going to start off with Mason McTavish of the Anaheim Ducks. This article is, of course, brought to you by our friends at Canucks Army. This article in particular is written by Jacob Fraser. So let's dive right into it. Excuse me. Near the top of the Vancouver Canucks trade target list this upcoming offseason should be restricted free agent Mason McTavish. McTavish just finished his third full season with the Anaheim Ducks and has subtly improved each year since he's been in the NHL. The 22-year-old centerman has been a very solid option for the Ducks in the middle six, but with the Canucks potentially being able to offer a bigger contract. Sorry, guys. What was I? But with the Canucks potentially being able to offer a bigger role, he could be a great option for the team to grow into that second line center role quickly. Let's take a look at the player himself. The former third overall pick in the 2021 NHL draft has had 3 straight 40-plus point seasons, reaching a new career high in goals, assists, and points. This past year, so 22 goals, 30 assists, 52 points, making him the second leading scorer on the Ducks behind Troy Terry, who's at 55 points. These point totals don't scream high-end second-line center. Sorry, guys. These point totals don't scream high-end second-line center. But McTavish was able to put up these numbers playing 16 minutes and 53 seconds per night on the league's 24th place team. And at just 22 years old, McTavish could be in for another big jump to grow into that role. He's a big 6'1", 220-pound power forward that is hard on the forecheck, defensively sound, and has a nose for the net. We haven't seen him in the NHL playoffs yet in his career, but we do have some samples of his game in crunch time. McTavish made the game-saving defensive play in the 2022 World Junior Championship gold medal game against Finland, where he batted the puck off the goal line in overtime, and Canada went on to win later on in that game. Of course, there is a massive difference between a gold medal game in the World Juniors and the NHL playoffs. However, given the grit and his playstyle, it would be fair to assume McTavish could maintain his play throughout a playoff run. Let's take a look at the fit. McTavish spent the majority of last season in the Ducks' middle six, playing alongside a combination of Trevor Zegras, Sam Colangelo, Cutter Gauthier, and Robbie Fabry. His fit on the Canucks would be an immediate middle six centerman that would complement Filipino as a great 1-2 punch between the second and third lines. Heedle would play more of a finesse role that creates off the rush. Sorry. While McTavish can crash and bang on the forecheck and create from down low. Connor Garland would also be a great fit on McTavish's wing. Both Garland and McTavish like to cycle the puck down low and work from the corners and behind the net to create scoring chances. This fit could allow Garland to use his playmaking skills to set McTavish up in tight, which can give him plenty of scoring opportunities. Drew O'Connor or Kiefer Sherwood would also be a great fit alongside McTavish, using their speed and forechecking ability to help create space through the neutral zone and get in on loose pucks, starting the cycle for Garland and McTavish. A line of Sherwood, O'Connor, McTavish, Garland would be a very tough third line for other teams to defend because of their puck moving and hard forechecking. McTavish was also featured on the Ducks' top power play unit and would be a great fit in the bumper spot on the Canucks' top unit. He's a big body that can utilize his size and reach to box defenders out, create space for himself in the slot, and has a dangerous shot to bury his chances. Let's take a look at what it would cost the Vancouver Canucks to acquire Mason McTavish. Trading for a proven young player like McTavish might be a challenge, although since he is an upcoming RFA, there is a chance that a deal could come to fruition. According to AFP Analytics, a 3-year bridge deal for McTavish is projected to cost just under $4 million, while a longer-term extension is projected at 6 years at just under $6.8 million. The Canucks do have their 2026 second-round pick, so they could choose to oversheet him at that bridge deal. However, the Ducks would likely match that, as they wouldn't want to lose a player of his caliber and age for just a second-round pick. To entice McTavish away from Anaheim, the Canucks would likely have to offer something with more term, but the team doesn't have the proper draft compensation to do so in an offer sheet. This is where a trade would have to come in. The Canucks' 2025 first-round pick would be a good starting point in order to get a deal done, but they would have to add a few assets to that as well. With the Ducks taking a step forward this season and McTavish ending the year with 25 points after the trade deadline, so after 28 games, 25 points in 28 games, a trade may not be likely unless the Canucks were to truly blow away the Ducks with an offer. Perhaps adding a younger roster player like Niels Höglander and their 2026 second-round pick could be enough to get a deal done, but given the Ducks are now transitioning to a contending team, they likely would hold a young player who could help them now over picks, say like a Victor Mancini. So Canucks fans, is the 15th overall pick in this year's draft plus their 2026 second-round pick and Niels Höglander and Victor Mancini too high of a price to pay for Mason McTavish, or is the risk worth the reward of getting a young middle six center who is yet to reach his true potential? Let us know in the comments below. So, Mason McTavish. So after reading this, excuse me. Sorry. So with Mason McTavish, I have brought up McTavish previously. A few months ago, I believe I brought him up around the trade deadline. But not only having read this article, but also thinking about it, I don't think the Canucks should even attempt to go after Mason McTavish, as obviously it's going to cost them too much in the end. And also, I wholeheartedly agree with what this article said. Anaheim is not going to be willing to give up McTavish unless they had their socks rocked by the Canucks, or if they had their socks blown off by the Canucks with an offer, and the Canucks obviously do not have the prospects, or the number of prospects, I should say, to facilitate this deal. So, but he's still, I would still classify him as a target. No, I think it's not just going to be the Canucks that could be targeting Mason McTavish. It could be other teams trying to entice him to, or well, not entice him, but are going to be asking about McTavish. Are going to be knocking on Anaheim's door. Asking them, hey, what do you want for McTavish? I also think Anaheim would be foolish to let him go, especially since they are starting to turn things around and are looking to be a contending team for the first time in a very long time. So, and they're going to need a guy like McTavish in their lineup and on their roster. So I do not think that the Canucks really stand a chance at acquiring Mason McTavish as a trade target and having him be their second or third line center. I just think the cost is too much. And also, Anaheim is not going to be willing to part with a player not only as young as him, but someone with so much potential. I just don't see it happening. So there is that. But let's look at part number 2. So let's look at the second player that we're going to be talking about. The second player is Pavel Zacha of the Boston Bruins. So let's go ahead and dive into this one. This article is written by Stefan Roget from Canucks Army. Let's dive right into it. The Vancouver Canucks do tend to have a pretty good history with players named Pavel. I see what you did there, Stefan. In our ongoing search for a new center for the Canucks to potentially target via trade during the summer of 2025, we land on Pavel Zacha of the Boston Bruins. The Canucks and Bruins have exchanged a number of players in recent years, if rarely directly. Last summer, the two teams effectively traded Nikita Zadorov and Elias Lindholm for Jake DeBrusk, Danton Heinen, and Derek Forbort via a series of 4 UFA signings. Might the two teams get together for an actual trade this offseason? If they do, expect the 28-year-old 6'4", 207-pound Zacha to be of primary interest. The Bruins have struggled to make up for the considerable loss that was the retirement of Patrice Bergeron. Minus him, their center depth has suffered greatly, so why would they be interested in moving Zacha in the first place? I completely agree with that, especially considering they traded Charlie Coyle. It all comes down to what the Bruins decide to do from here, but there are a couple of scenarios in which we could see Zacha hitting the market. The first is if the Bruins decide to move toward a full rebuild. They did just sell off Brad Marchand and finished well outside the playoffs for the first time in recent memory. See, Bruins fans, it don't feel so good, does it? Should they decide to go down the rebuild path, Zacha is probably just slightly too old to keep around, especially with younger centers like Morgan Geekie, Matthew Poitras, Fraser Minton, and even Casey Middlestat already on deck. But a rebuild seems a bit unlikely given that the Bruins still have veterans like the aforementioned Zadorov and Lindholm, along with bigger names like David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm, and Jeremy Swayman, all under long-term contract, so the Bruins will probably aim to retool before they rebuild. Under that scenario, the Bruins would find themselves fairly desperate to land a true 1C. In the quest for that goal, they'll pretty much need to trade one of those aforementioned middle 6 centers, both for cap and roster space. Zacha is the oldest of the bunch and still retains some trade value, so he makes the most sense to go here. There's also the disappointment factor to consider. Bruins acquired Zacha in part to potentially take over some of the load from Bergeron upon the latter's retirement. While Zacha has become a better and more well-rounded center in Boston than he was in New Jersey, he hasn't taken that full offensive step forward that was hoped for, and now the Bruins have other younger centers with more potential that they'd love to give that opportunity to. But a different franchise, one without young centers on deck, and one that perhaps might be entirely comfortable with Zacha remaining just a decent 2C he currently is, might find Zacha more valuable than do the Bruins right now, a team like the Vancouver Canucks. Let's look at the player. Selected at 6th overall in the 2015 NHL entry draft, Zacha is still probably considered a bit of a draft letdown. The rest of the top 10 that year, Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel, Dylan Strome, Mitch Marner, Noah Hanifin, Ivan Provorov, Zach Werenski, Timo Meier, and Mikko Rantanen. Zacha is pretty plainly the worst of the bunch, but that doesn't make him a bad NHL player. It just makes him part of an exceptional draft class compared to the one that we have this year. The draft hype made plenty of sense at the time. Zacha was a late bloomer who rose rapidly through the ranks of his draft year, based primarily on his rare blend of size, skating ability, and genuine puck skill. It's safe to say that the New Jersey Devils didn't get their money's worth from that 60 or the 6th overall pick. Zacha stepped right into the NHL in his draft +2 season, posting 8 goals and 24 points as a rookie, which were respectable enough numbers. But Zacha plateaued very early on. As a sophomore, he notched 25 points, then 25 points again in his third year. The 2019-2020 campaign looked to be a bit of a breakout for Zacha as he managed 8 goals and 32 points in just 65 games, but that was a plateau too. Zacha got 35 points the next season, albeit in only 50 games, then 36 points in 70 games for 2021-2022, at which point the New Jersey Devils had Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier in the fold and were ready to move on. That summer, the Devils dealt Zacha to the Bruins for Erik Haula, a more productive forward, sure, but also 6 years Zacha's senior. The Bruins, for their part, still held hope for Zacha breaking out, and he kind of did. Zacha's first season in Boston in 2022-2023 was easily his best yet, with a major offensive step forward to 21 goals and 57 points in 82 games. He kept that going strong with another 21 goals and 59 points in 78 games for 2023-2024, before suffering a bit of a step back to 14 goals and 47 points in 82 games for 2024-2025. In other words, Zacha turned into a 50 to 60 point center essentially the minute he was traded to Boston, and he stayed at that level for 3 seasons running. That's basic 2C production. But Zacha has also taken efforts to round out his two-way game to better fit into the structured Boston system. Zacha was a bit of a defensive disaster in New Jersey. His 2020-2021 season was his best offensive output for the Devils, but it also saw him on the ice for 22 goals for and 36 against at 5-on-5. He turned that around instantly in Boston. His even strength goal differentials there, 65-39, 56-33, and 53-52. The last one might not sound as impressive, but that Zacha kept it positive through a trying 2024-2025 season in Boston is still worth mentioning. Especially because as Zacha has rounded out his game, he's been given more and more responsibility. He never achieved a positive control of high danger chances in New Jersey. He's always done so since coming to Boston, and as of 24-25, he'd become their most reliable defensive center. He's gotten better at faceoffs too, with a 53.2% rating last year. Is he Patrice Bergeron 2.0? No, not even close. But Zacha is a player who can post some 60-odd points while skating greater than average difficulty matchups and keeping his head well above water. Sounds like a rock-solid 2C so long as the cost isn't too out of line with the production. Speaking of cost, let's look at the cost. Would the Bruins accept the 15th overall pick for Zacha? We think they certainly would. Same goes for any of the Canucks' truly blue-chip prospects. But we'd imagine that for this player in particular, the Canucks would be aiming at a lower price tag. Zacha is old enough to reasonably say that he's maximized on his potential as a center. He is what he is at this point, and what he is not is someone with any real 1C potential left. If the Canucks are really going to part with a premium future asset, it should probably be for someone with more upside, but that's not to say that they can't find a righter price for Zacha. The Bruins have been accumulating draft picks and players in the 20 to 25 age range. Maybe it's as simple as a second-round pick, a B-level prospect or two. Think Sawyer Minio or Kirill Kudratsev, and the extra cap space to pursue a true 1C that comes with dumping Zacha's contract. That contract, by the way, 2 more seasons at $4.75 million. That's expensive enough that the Bruins might want it off the books as they pursue more expensive free agents and trade targets, but it's about perfect for what the Canucks might want to spend on a genuine 2C. Zacha does have an 18 no trade clause, but we don't see that as a major barrier, especially after how last season went in Boston. Both sides might be looking for a fresh start here, and that too could lower the overall asking price. Let's take a look at the fit and how Pavel Zacha would fit on this Canucks roster and in this lineup. We've looked at plenty of centers with upside so far. Zacha is a little different. He's a mostly finished product at this point, but that product is certainly one the Canucks could use. Zacha slots in as a 2C that is never going to challenge Elias Pettersson for 1C status. At the same time, that consistent production of about 50 to 60 points, combined with his increasing defensive abilities, make him a mighty fine complement. Having someone that can be relied on for both consistent offense and consistent defense is not a luxury that Pettersson has been afforded very often in his career. Speaking of the Bruins, Zacha almost came off as an Elias Lindholm light, and Lindholm did have a positive impact on the Canucks' center depth while he was here. Zacha definitely doesn't fix the Canucks' offensive woes single-handedly, but at the same time, he's a theoretically cheap enough acquisition at a cheap enough salary that he'd leave plenty of cap space and assets on the table to continue to pursue other offensive options on the wing. In other words, Zacha appears to be a terrific target for the Canucks to pursue this summer, so long as the Bruins are as comfortable trading him as we think they'll be, and so long as they don't apply any old rival tax to their still bitter 2011 rivals. So that is Pavel Zacha. And having read this article and listened to the examples, talking about why he would be a good fit, and then talking about what it would cost the Canucks. I'll admit, when I first heard about this idea of the Canucks pursuing Pavel Zacha, I'll admit I did not like it. Not because I think Zacha is a bad player or not good enough. It's just, I think when it comes to a second line center, you want someone who's 60 or you basically want when I think of a 2C, I want someone, having JT Miller as their second line center before he was traded. JT was a 100-point guy. You had a 100-point guy as your first line center, and you had a 100-point guy as your second line center. So anything below that might not, to me, is not good, or not necessarily not good, but basically anyone who is below that production wise, it's, I'm trying to think of a word for it. I think you guys know what I'm trying to get at, though. We're so used to having JT and PD caliber players as 1 and 2C, someone who has 80 plus points. Zacha obviously is a potential 60-point guy. I'm looking for someone who's 60 or more when it comes to our 2C, and I just don't think Zacha is that type of player. He has not been able to hit 60 yet. He's gotten just below 60, I believe. And although I will admit, I believe it was a couple years ago, I did have Zacha in my fantasy hockey at one point, just because, some of my centers at the time were on the IR and I needed to pick somebody up, and Zacha, and it was also that season that he played really well in Boston. I believe they mentioned that was his first season in Boston. So he played very well. I don't hate the idea of the Canucks targeting Zacha, but let's just say at the end of the day, wouldn't be my first choice. But hey, if the Canucks can get a deal for Zacha and that's not too costly, then I'd be okay with that. If they went out and got Zacha, and so long as it didn't cost them too much, I'd be fine with it. But as I just mentioned, he's not my first option. But that is this video. Bit of a long one, as I decided to combine the two targets into one big video. And yeah, so let me know in the comment section down below. What do you guys think about Mason McTavish? Do you guys agree with me that, there's probably Canucks have zero chance, at getting McTavish? Do you guys agree with me that Anaheim would be silly, or crazy to even consider trading him, considering how young he is and all that potential that he has? What do you guys think about Pavel Zacha as a potential trade target for the Vancouver Canucks this offseason? Let me know in the comment section down below who you would prefer, who you think is most likely, or rather, who's more realistic between the two that the Canucks could potentially actually trade for, and who do you think between the two? Actually, no, it's basically the same thing. Never mind. Sorry. But yeah, no, let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think. And as always, if you guys like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you want to stay up to date on all your Vancouver Canucks, as well as your Abbotsford Canucks content, be sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you never miss a single video. Reminder, you can find us on social media. You can find us on Facebook. Just search The Line Change, and you will be able to find our Facebook page. You can find us on Instagram at The Line Change. You can find us on X at Line Change Van. You can find us on TikTok as well at the.line.change.po. And as well, feel free to follow us on all of our social media platforms. It's, of course, greatly appreciated. And also, if you prefer a audio version of this podcast, you can find us on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And when it comes to Spotify, once again, feel free to give us a follow. It's obviously, as I mentioned, greatly appreciated, as is giving us a rate and review on Spotify. Greatly appreciated as well. And yeah, that's going to do it for this video. As always, go Canucks, go. Go Abby. Go Abby. Let's win that. Let's break the curse, or let's break the game 2 curse. Let's win game 2, and let's go into Texas with a commanding 2-0 lead in the series. And I'll see you guys in the next video.